As Australia heads into the warmer months, Day Out with Thomas returns to the New South Wales Rail Museum at Thelmere on Saturday, September 9th, 2023. This is our first coverage of the museum's Thomas Day since our last one in 2018. After that, the COVID-19 pandemic had forced the event to be cancelled in 2020 and 2021. The event returned in full swing in May 2022 and is still going strong in 2023, with 3001 dressed as the character Donald, providing shuttle trains from Thelmere, fittingly called Sodor for the event, to Buxton, while CPH Rail Motor 18 is seen dressed as Toby, ready to take passengers to the museum and back. Unlike the other times we see shuttle trains at the museum, for Thomas Days, 4916 is seen leading the train to Buxton, while 3001 assists. Here we see the train leaving Thelmere on its third last shuttle train. Meanwhile, the Fat Controller, who was really called Sir Topham Hatt by the Reverend W. Audrey, can be seen waving to the passengers. Meanwhile, Thomas the Tank Engine is seen on display for children and parents to visit in his cab. The plobs of paint surrounding him reflect on the theme of the event, which is being colourful. Later, on its second last run, 4916 leads the train once again. This time we see it passing through Kurrajard. Then we see 3001 leading the train back to Thelmere. Unfortunately, even on Thomas Days, there will always be that one driver who will take a risk at level crossings. The driver may have gotten away unscathed, but next time, they may not be so lucky. But despite that, we see 4916 leading the final shuttle train to Buxton for the day, with at least one road driver showing respect for the rules. 3001 will now lead the train back to Thelmere filled with happy families after spending a day out with Thomas and his friends. There are 2 trains left for Transport Heritage New South Wales' mainline program for 2023 as summer is approaching closely. One of these trains is the Steam to the Surf, hauled by 3801. The engine will be taking passengers to Scarborough, Ostermere and Wollongong on the Illawarra's south coast. We see 3801 passing us at Loftus Station after picking up booked passengers at Sutherland on Saturday, October 14th, 2023. This is 3801's first run to Wollongong since it last operated in 2007, and the first time the Steam to the Surf train was in operation since 2017. We caught up with the engine at Bulli after dropping off passengers at Scarborough and Ostermere in the south coast. While passengers enjoy a nice time at their destinations, 3801 sits in the sidings near Wollongong Station being serviced ready for its return run to Sydney. Now 3801 begins to shunt to its train.
That's just my guess. Yeah. I think so anyways. I'm not for sure because I mean...
With the shunting done, we see 3801 coming through Bald Hill Tunnel near Stanwell Park as the engine takes its Saturday patrons home to Sydney. Next day, Sunday, October 15th, 3801 passes by Carlton from Cogra with its Sunday passengers. On the return journey, 3801 passes us at Moordale. While 3801 went to Wollongong, 5917 made its tracks to Kiama with the picnic train, seen here passing us at Carlton from Cogra, while a Tangara set heads its way to Sydney on Sunday, October 15th, 2023. 4903, who is actually from the picnic train, is seen assisting at the rear. We move to Alawa and see 5917 heading back to Tempe. '5917 had done 2 more trips to Kiama between November 4th and 5th, and some shuttle trains from Wollongong to Scarborough on November the 11th and 12th. And while we hadn't captured those trips on camera, we did, however, see it heading back to Campsie on its transfer run from Wollongong on Sunday, November 12th, 2023, at Alawa. The loco had done shuttle trains on the central coast of New South Wales from Gosford to Hawkesbury River between Saturday, December 2nd and Sunday, December 3rd, which brought the Picnic Train's 2023 season to a close. But for us, this is where we say hooroo to 5917 and the Picnic Train for 2023. Also on Sunday, October 15th, 2023, the Sydney Tramway Museum at Loftus in the Sutherland Shire was celebrating the 125th anniversary of the C-Class tram C29. Although we didn't capture any footage of the birthday tram, we did at least see its fellow sibling C290 ready to take its passengers to the former Sutherland Railway substation with N728 for company. We hop on board the C-Class tram. 97 of these trams were built between 1896 to 1900 and were built by 3 Sydney firms, which were Bignall and Morrison, Hudson Brothers and Klein Engineering. Number 290 was a Bignall and Morrison built tram from 1896. Number 29 was a Hudson Brothers tram built in 1898. The C-Class trams mainly operated from Ridge Street Tram Depot, and to a lesser extent from Rushcutters Bay, Ultimo and Waverley. Some members of the C-Class were sold to Victoria. In 1905, 3 were sold to Ballarat, and in 1907, 4 members were sold to the Victorian Railways as replacements after their trams were sadly destroyed in a fire at Elwood Depot. Withdrawal for the C-Class began in 1917, and all were out of service by 1926. However, one remained in service between 1924 until 1966 on a jetty at Byron Bay in the far northeastern corner of New South Wales as a locomotive-hauled carriage. Number 290 was converted as a breakdown car for the New South Wales Department of Transport in 1927, acquired by the museum in 1955, and will later be restored back to carrying passengers by the South Pacific Electric Railway, the operators of the Tramway Museum, between 1996 to 97. Number 29 was also converted as a breakdown car in 1901 and was later converted as a passenger-carrying tram by the museum in 1995. It was restored back to operational condition by the museum in 2001. Thankfully, like number 29 and 290, some members of the C-Class were preserved. Number 12, 33 and 37, all Hudson Brothers built trams, are also at the Sydney Tramway Museum. However, number 12 was destroyed in a fire at the museum caused by vandals in 2015 and was sadly scrapped. Number 11 Hudson Brothers built is preserved by the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney and is on display at their transport exhibition. And number 95 Klein Engineering built is used as a carriage at the Illawarra Light Railway Museum at Albion Park in the Illawarra. Away we go to the old substation. N728, seen in front of us, was one of the 97 N-Class members. 728 was built in 1906 by the Meadowbank Manufacturing Company. The N-Class were attached at various depots, which were Dowling Street, Newtown, Rozelle, Tempe, Ultimo, Enfield and Rockdale. 9 of them were later transferred to Newcastle as steam trailers in 1915, and will later on be returned to with their electrical components reinstated. The last N-Class tram ran in 1949. 728 was acquired by the museum in 1953. The Sydney Tramway Museum began its life in 1956, when construction of the museum began to take place at its original site on the edge of the Royal National Park in the Sutherland Shire. It was officially opened in 1965. In 1975, the New South Wales State Government approved the museum moving to its new site at Loftus, across the Pacific Highway, adjacent to the railway station. Construction commenced in 1980, and the first trams transferred from the original site arrived at their new base in November 1982. The museum opened at Loftus in 1988 during Australia's bicentennial and began to operate rides in 1993 after Sydney Rail, now Sydney Trains, closed down the 2-kilometre track to the Royal National Park in 1991. We now arrive at our destination, the Sutherland Railway Substation. Before we head into the substation, 290 now departs back to the museum. Then later, 728. The Sutherland Railway Substation was built in 1926 by the former New South Wales Government Railways as part of the initial electrification of the Illawarra line. It provided power from Como Bridge to the terminus of the Royal National Park, and later on the Cronulla line. It was replaced by a new substation adjacent to the old building in 1979 and was stripped of its electrical equipment, and the building was used for office and workshop type functions for the Signals branch. It's the last remaining brick substation building in near original condition in the Sydney metro area. The museum started to restore the building in 2016, and on Tuesday, December 12, 2017, the substation was reopened as a museum, covering its history. Inside the museum is a rotary converter. This one was from the ex-substation at Kogarah in the St. George area that the museum acquired back in 1961, which were an efficient method of converting AC to DC for railway and tramway traction, but were difficult to maintain between the 1900s and the 1930s. Apart from the rotary converter from Kogarah, there are no known conserved railway or tramway rotary converters in New South Wales. DC was the best power source for electric traction at the time due to DC motors inheriting variable speed and have high torque output when starting. However, DC feeders and overhead wiring used in railway and tramway traction is limited to a transmission distance of about 8 kilometers. The new more efficient method of transmitting electric power over longer distances is high voltage 25 kV AC for new heavy electric railways. Kogarah's rotary converter, which is similar to the one that Sutherland had, was manufactured in England in 1927. On display in the museum is Sydney Cable Tramcar number 23, which was built in 1886. In 1905 it was sold after servicing King Street in Sydney and was turned into a shack at Lillypilly in southern Sydney. The museum acquired the cable tramcar in 1976 and was restored by students at Wollongong High School near Wollongong. With the cable tramcar is the cable grip car dummy from Melbourne, Victoria number 322. A cable tram consisted of two vehicles working together, a leading open tramcar with perimeter seats under a canopy-style roof, which is known as a dummy or grip car, and an enclosed saloon tram or trailer. Restoration for this item began in 2010. Also on display are the old wooden escalators that were used at Town Hall Station in Sydney CBD from the 1950s until they were replaced by more modern ones in 2017. Model ships from the MV Cape Don Society were on display too. These are replicas of actual steamer ferries with Firelight from 1878 and Brighton from 1883. To end our visit, we take a look at the impressive HO model tramway layout. Sadly, no models were running, but an impressive layout to marvel at nonetheless. We return to the Sutherland terminus as 728 pulls in. Next, 290 is seen pulling in. .290 now takes the lead on the run back to the museum at Loftus. As 290 sets down, we see F-Class 393 and O-Class 828 ready to leave for the Royal National Park. As the two trams head off to the Royal National Park station, we end our day by taking a look at the museum. But first, we see Steam Tram 1A on display in the yards. It was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA in 1879, and was the first of its 125 classmates and served the tramway of Kogarah until 1937, and was presented to the Museum of Applied Arts and Science, the Powerhouse Museum for Preservation, in 1940, and is on loan to the Tramway Museum. Inside the museum we see trams that had once served the city of Sydney, such as 1740 of the R-Class fleet. It entered service in 1933, and had mostly served the North Sydney system. It was withdrawn from service a week before the closure of the Sydney Tramway system in 1961, but it was donated to the museum in 1959, but wasn't delivered until 1961. 134S, built by Ritchie Brothers in 1899, was once called 102 of the D-Class fleet, until it was converted into a scrubber car in 1930. They were called that as they used carbon-dumped blocks to scrub debris off the railhead. It was acquired to the museum in 1961 and was used to clean the Eastern Suburbs Railway in 1978-79, 1983 for similar purpose on the Cronulla line, and 1997 to scrub the tracks around Haymarket for the light rail line when it was newly opened. There are also trams from different countries. One of these is Nagasaki 1054 from Japan. It was built for the Sendai Nagasaki Tramway in 1952 by Niigata Iron Works and was acquired by the museum in 1992 and is operated on some occasion. Its most recent operation was back in June 2023 for the museum's International Transport Cavalcade. Another overseas tram, this time from Milan, Italy, numbered 1692. This tram came to Australia in 2001 and was sent to Bendigo in Victoria for completion of the work to make it a double-ended vehicle ready to be delivered to Sydney. However, the Victorians had borrowed it for their Moomba Festival, a community festival held in Melbourne. It then retired from service in Victoria and resided at Hawthorn Depot Museum as a static display. It finally came to Loftus in 2015. These types of tram cars were called in English Peter Witts, named after the American streetcar designer. However, the design didn't work in Italy, and it had to be altered. Berlin 1533, which was built in 1969 by the East German Railways. The museum acquired it in 1996, 7 years after the Berlin Wall was torn down, reuniting East and West Germany. We move back to some Australian trams now. This one is called Ballarat 12 from Victoria. The tram was built by the Motorbank Manufacturing Company in 1908 and was acquired by the museum in 1974. We conclude our day with Melbourne Y1 Class number 611, built in 1930 and was withdrawn from service in 1965 and stored. Between 1972 and 1982, they were brought out again for service and were used for driver training or special charters until the 1990s. 611 was donated to the museum at Loftus in 2005. The Sydney Tramway Museum is a great place to visit and is opened every Wednesday and Sunday, with trams operated between 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Wednesdays and 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sundays. For more information, head to their website. Link is in the description. At Menangle Station on Saturday, November 18th, 2023, we await for 3801 with its last mainline train for 2023 to the New South Wales Rail Museum at Felmere. Before we see the loco, a Toyota Land Cruiser from the Australian Rail Track Corporation, ARTC, is seen passing through surveying the track. As we continue to wait for 3801, a New South Wales Trainlink Explorer set passes through on the same track as the Land Cruiser. New South Wales Trainlink was established on July 1st, 2013, and is a train and coach operator that provides services throughout New South Wales and the ACT, Australian Capital Territory, along with limited interstate trips into Victoria, Queensland, and South Australia. Now we see 3801 passing by dramatically. At Picton, we see 3801 pulling in, ready to be switched to the line heading towards Thelmere. Picton wasn't one of our planned spots to film the engine, but it became one because the engine and its train was held up at Allied Mills in Malden, which is nearby Picton, due to a freight train using the downline to Sydney, which gave us the advantage. The reason 3801 has to use the down track is because it's the only path for it to be switched to the line heading towards Thelmere. Next we move to the Thelmere Banks, as we see 3801 climbing through as it nears its destination. The carriages are now being pulled away by one of the museum's resident diesels, while 3801 awaits to be serviced, ready for its return journey to Sydney later in the day. Meanwhile, from the museum roundhouse, 3001 makes its way to Buxton on its second shuttle train of the day. Almost like the scene from the 1974 short film A Steam Train Passes, 3801 is now to be turned on the museum turntable. This turntable had been with the museum since its inception at its former Enfield site at Roundhouse No. 3 in Sydney, and was moved to Thelmea around the late 1970s after the museum's big move of its exhibits from Enfield. This 105-foot turntable is so large it could turn the likes of 6029 the Garrett. The turntable was once located near Thelmea Station since moving from Sydney up until 2009, which was when the roundhouse was opened as part of the museum's redevelopment scheme. While 3801 is getting serviced, we see 3001 once again pulling into Thelmia. After its shunting and servicing, we now move to Kurrajard, as 3001 makes its last run for the day to Buxton. Back at Thelmia, 3801 is now seen ready for its return trip to Sydney, while 3001 pulls in from Buxton and will shunt itself into the museum yard ready for the next day of shuttle trips. After that, 3801 now departs for Sydney. To conclude the day, we now move to Menangle Park Station, located next to the racecourse. Before we see the engine, we see another New South Wales Trainlink Explorer set pulling in, dropping off passengers as it heads further southwest. Next we see a cube freight train passing through. Then finally we see 3801 passing through heading towards Sydney, with a couple of stops at Glenfield and Stratfield to drop off some of its booked passengers. Although 3801 will do another trip to Thelmia on Sunday, November 19th, this is where we say hooroo to 3801 for the year 2023. In the words of Bing Crosby, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas as we return to Thelmia for the final steam event in New South Wales for 2023 at the New South Wales Rail Museum on Sunday, November 26, 2023. And what a way to end the season. There were the engine that had opened it all in March 2023, which is 3001, who is providing shuttle rides from Thelmere to Buxton and back with its booked passages, along with Santa Claus and his elf as a special guest to greet families, taking pictures with children, and giving out candy canes in spirit of the festive season. .3001 will depart Thelmere on its second shuttle train. We see the engine back at Thelmere getting ready for its third run to Buxton, but only for this run is 4807, who will be assisting. We hop on board the train on its final run for the day, this time unassisted. Next, we see it shunting to the back at Buxton. This time, we see it from the perspective of the train carriage.
Have you seen Cherry? So close. So close, Pip. Oh, it's loud, isn't it? Wow.
It's now time for us to head back to Thelmia. At the museum, 3001 will now marshal its train into the museum yard. And although it will be ending the steam season with more of these Santa shuttle trains on December 2nd and 3rd, this is where we say farewell to 3001 and to the New South Wales steam season for 2023. We will be back covering the New South Wales steam season for the year 2024.